Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Taking Stock Live. I'm your host, Kalila Reynolds, joining you live from Kingston City this week. And of course, we have another amazing show lined up for you. Let me tell you what's happening. Jamaica's economic trajectory has been a mix of hurdles and achievements. Are we cruising confidently, or do we need to navigate a brand new path? We'll delve into an assessment of Jamaica's economic management. But first, I want you to hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, share this video with a friend, let them know that we're about to dive into this conversation. And of course, subscribe to the newsletter at KalilaReynolds.com/newsletter. Now, come on, let's get this money.
We examine Jamaica's economic future. Are we on the right track, or is a course correction necessary? Co-chair of EPOC and CEO of JMMB, Keith Duncan, joins us live to share his expert insights on the path ahead for Jamaica. And the analysts weigh in on the latest market developments. Guyana is challenging ExxonMobil in court, and do US Travel Advisories really harm Jamaica's tourism industry? We'll discuss.
But first, here's What's Hot, brought to you by JMMB Group, your best interest at heart.
Manufacturing and distribution company Omni Industries is looking to go public with the first initial public offering of 2024. The company specializes in thermoplastic products such as PVC pipes, chairs, and buckets. The company is offering 500 million shares priced at $1 each. Investors must buy a minimum of 1,000 shares, followed by increments of 100. The offer opens this Friday, May 17, and is expected to close on May 31. Distribution company Wisynco is expanding its workforce by adding another 400 persons to its roster. They've hired 170 employees since November. The company wants to add more engineers and machine operators to meet the demands of the local and international markets. The company is hosting a job fair with the Ministry of Labor and Social Security on May 21 in Port St. Catherine. Grace Kennedy is looking to increase its shareholders' benefits by increasing its dividend yield. The company recently announced its second dividend payment of 55 cents per share, a 10% increase over the 50-cent dividend it paid in June 2023. The dividend will be paid on June 14 and it totals approximately 545 million Jamaican dollars. The company made over $42 billion in revenue generated for its first quarter, which ended in March. Profits were up almost 2% to $2.3 billion. Failed cryptocurrency exchange FTX says it will be able to repay all its customers in full plus. The crypto exchange went bankrupt in November 2022 after allegations of fraud were made against former CEO Sam Bankman-Fried. FTX's new CEO says the company has recovered between 14 and 16 billion US dollars worth of assets to repay customers. All non-governmental customers will get cash payments equivalent to 118% of the assets they had stored on FTX at the time it went bankrupt. The plan still needs to be approved by a bankruptcy court.
What's Hot was brought to you by JMMB Group, your best interest at heart.
Are you ready to step up social media marketing for your business? Get ready for the Summer Social Splash. Be one of the first 10 companies to sign up and get 60% off our influencer promotion package featuring yours truly. I'll come to your business and highlight your product or service to over 300,000 followers on Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn, but only 10 spots are available and it's first come, first serve. So don't wait too long to book this special offer. It's 60% off for the summer. Contact business at moneymediaja.com or call 876-498-6490 today. Let's get this money. All right, welcome back. Yes, the summer social splash is in effect, so make sure you call those numbers, email business at moneymediaja.com. So back in April, the Economic Program Oversight Committee, EPOC, got together to check out how the country is doing with its fiscal and monetary performance. So, what did they find out and what suggestions do they have? Joining us now is co-chair of EPOC, Keith Duncan. Welcome back to the show, Keith.
Thank you, Kalila, and thank you for having me. A good night to your listeners and viewers. And Kalila is actually the co-chair disappeared in 2019 when we moved away from the IMF program, when I was actually co-chair.
Okay.
Yes, as chairman.
Okay. All right, good. Thanks for that clarification. So that's the hat that you're wearing tonight, because you're no stranger to this show. You've been here in different capacities, but tonight you're here in the capacity as chairman of EPOC. First of all, for those who don't know what EPOC does, just give us a brief overview.
Okay. So EPOC was actually set up in 2013 on the IMF program, the Extended Fund Facility, through 2013 and 16, and it came together with the financial sector, coming together with civil society, with the support of Dr. Peter Phillips to provide oversight over Jamaica's economic program. Elements of that economic program are your fiscal policies and your monetary policies. Fiscal is being in your budget, your revenues, your expenditures, and the monetary being your inflation, your exchange rate, your international reserves, and monetary policy in general. In terms of monitoring the monetary and the fiscal policies of the government of Jamaica, ensuring that you're hitting your having oversight over the quantitative targets and your policy commitments in terms of what are the policy commitments that are embedded in the economic program.
So you are the overseer of the government's economic program, and it was quite a novel thing when EPOC was implemented several years ago. So in the most recent meeting and overview, there are a few things that stood out. So lower than expected tax revenues, for one, and then of course the inflation rates, which we've been watching like a hawk, especially over the past few months. So how are these affecting Jamaica's economic stability and growth?
Right. Well, we know they're at the underlying factor that's driving policy globally right now is inflation, and inflation from COVID, when there was the supply chain disruptions, the disruption to the logistics, and basically the shipping costs went up through the roof, and there was therefore supply chain disruptions, and inflation started to move upwards. That was also accommodated by loose monetary policy in that period, and then there were easy monetary policy to stimulate the economy and drive liquidity into the markets to help, as I said, drive economic activity, and then that continued. Everyone thought that inflation was going to be transitionary, and then Ukraine happened, and it no longer was transitionary, and it became inflation became almost embedded in the global economic kind of landscape because of commodity prices went up, oil prices went up, and further supply chain disruptions, and then so the globe, including Jamaica, has been fighting this inflation for a while. Inflation went outside of the range, or the BOJ target range of 4 to 6%, and BOJ had to tighten, and the BOJ had to tighten monetary policy. The GOJ gives the BOJ the target range for inflation, which is 4 to 6%. The BOJ in its inflation targeting is very much focused around using tight monetary policy, interest rates, increasing interest rates from 50 basis points or half a percentage point to 7% over a 2 to 3 year period, and has held interest rates there steady and kept liquidity very tight in pulling back the liquidity out that it injected with COVID, and therefore keeping liquidity very tight. That has implications for your fiscal policy because your cost of debt increases for the government. It has implications because the policy is designed to slow down domestic demand, slow down economic activity, and raise interest rates to borrowers at your deposit taking institutions and in the private capital markets. So therefore, the cost of money becomes expensive for borrowers, and therefore it reduces investments, because people are going to wait and see or hold on to investments because the cost of money has increased. Therefore, it slows the economy. And if you slow the economy, you slow tax revenues, and you basically slow because you have slowed economic activity and revenues. And it has a particular impact on the financial sector, because margins that the commercial banks and securities dealers and all that would be taking on net interest income are compressed. The markets are depressed, like, for example, the stock market and the fixed income markets, they'll be depressed. So there's not a lot of activity occurring. So it has an impact of slowing the entire economy. And this is because we're fighting inflation.
So is it time to revise that inflation target downward then? Because it is time for a review now.
Well, the review was done, and the Minister of Finance kept the target range at 4 to 6%, right? And however, inflation has come back within the target range for the first time since October of last year. It dipped into the 4 to 6% range in October of 23. It went back up with the increase in the public passenger vehicle fares, and it's back within the range of in March at 5.6%. The Bank of Jamaica projects that at their last monetary policy meeting, that inflation would continue to be out of the range until about September 2025. That was based on the assumption that the PPV fare increase that was due on April 1 of this year would have been implemented. The government of Jamaica pulled back on that fare increase because I believe they knew it would have an inflationary impact. That inflationary impact was modeled into BOJ's projections, which showed inflation outside of the 4 to 6% range up until September 2025. The BOJ will meet again in May, the Monetary Policy Committee. They will then run their models based on the fact that the PPV fares weren't increased. We would expect that inflation, their models would show inflation would moderate, and therefore maybe it would give the BOJ, because they're based on data, they're data driven, to say inflation is coming back within the range, it's on a downward trend, and therefore we can look to start easing monetary policy.
Because everybody's been complaining about inflation, and yes, it was outside of the range, it's back inside the range, but the question is, should we now reduce the range?
No, if you reduce the range, because the range is 4 to 6%, right? So inflation has to be within that range, right? So you're making it harder because they would like to see interest rate average out at about 5%, right? Now, if you reduce the range, then you're going to say it's going to be, BOJ is going to have to work that much harder with monetary policy, which means monetary policy tightening to get inflation lower than that 4 to 6%, right? So therefore, it is fine where it is, and it should move within the range of 4 to 6%. We're hoping faster than they anticipated for next year, because the government of Jamaica held off on the increase in transportation fares, right? So therefore, BOJ should be able to look in their May meeting, when the Monetary Policy Committee meets and they make a decision around interest rates, to send a signal to the market that we're either going to reduce rates, or we're going to hold, or we're seeing positive signs, or we're looking to reduce interest rates. I believe the central government, the central bank governor, Richard Biles, when he was in DC at the IBB conference, did indicate that he's looking at maybe reducing interest rates towards in a few months. We're hoping that can happen faster, because we think that would drive confidence into equity markets. It would increase liquidity. The market is just very tight. It's almost like we're in a vice grip in terms of financial services, and the cost of money is expensive, and everybody's looking for a breather.
Mm-hmm. And then what about something that I raised earlier as well, the tax revenue collection? That was below target. Is that something to be concerned about? Because it was, I think it's $25 billion. That's a lot of money.
Right. Well, that's, when you look at the tax revenue targets, right? So therefore, the budget for the year for tax revenues was to be 831 billion, right? Was the budget for the year, let me give you the accurate numbers, Kalila, right? The budget for the year in terms of tax revenues were for 23-24 was $856.4 billion, right? What the actual outturn was 831 billion. So we're actually 24 billion, 2.9% behind. So we're marginally behind our tax revenue budget. It's not a huge underperformance. Up to February, we were ahead of target. And it is in the month of March that there was a fall off in tax revenues. And that was driven by corporate income taxes, because we did not get the budgeted, the windfall that you normally get in the month of March when everybody pays their income taxes in the month of March from the corporates. A lot of that was driven by the financial sector, because they themselves remitted lower taxes because they have been impacted by the tight monetary policy, the higher interest rates, and their compressed margins. So, but businesses on a whole are feeling the impact of tight monetary policy. So therefore, corporate income taxes were flat year over year. GCT was on target, PAYE was on target, but corporate income taxes, business taxes were behind target.
So break that down for me a little further. Is it that businesses just didn't pay their taxes on time, or they are due less taxes than they were last year?
Well, they're making less money. So financial services firms are making less money because they have, most of them, right? Therefore, they would remit less taxes, right? So financial services, some businesses that have to serve their debt to service, interest costs would be higher, and therefore they would their profits would be reduced. Businesses, therefore, once you are a business and you have debt, your margins are going to be squeezed because your cost of money is more expensive. Therefore, you make less profit. Investments that you had planned for the future, you probably are not going to take them on at these elevated interest rates, and therefore the growth that you would have anticipated in your business, you have kind of held off. Let's wait and see what happens. Let's see if interest rates come off, and therefore corporate income taxes came in at $93 billion, which was the same as last year. That means corporate income taxes were flat year over year, right? But overall tax revenues grew by 10% year over year. And moving from tax revenues grew by 78.7 billion, 24 billion behind budget, but grew 10% year over year. But it was corporate income taxes, business taxes that remained flat.
So, all right. So that means that it's not that we're going to make it up in April. It's just not going to be paid because.
Well, the minister, I think the minister was clear that they need to do that. They need to investigate, because they said that some people filed but didn't pay, and that there was the impact of IFRS 17 on insurance companies, and all that had an impact, and then therefore there could be a timing issue. And he said what we would hear in the month of May, June, assess the numbers, see if there were any timing issues, and then we see where we come out. But what we know is that there was some weakness in corporate income taxes in the month of March.
Now, on the positive side, we talk about negative, we also have to talk about positive. We did hear good news concerning the net international reserves, the NIR. They hit record levels in March. What does this mean for the country?
Well, it means that we always have a buffer in case there is any kind of fallout in the economy. If there's a fallout in, for example, do you remember with COVID, we lost our tourism industry. And if you have the high levels of net international reserves, what you have is a buffer. right? And therefore you're and it really helps you out in crisis periods, or as we look to keep our exchange rate stable. We have high levels of net international reserves, and remember, one of the policy imperatives of the BOJ is exchange rate stability. So you use the NIR, the net international reserves, that 5 billion, to defend the currency in times of extreme volatility. And therefore, that's why over the last 2 to 3 years, we have kept exchange rate very stable. That's like a new phenomenon for Jamaica. Everybody used to think that, boy, exchange rate is going to keep moving and moving and moving and moving. And the Bank of Jamaica has been quite successful because it has reserves that's able to defend the currency and keep it stable within a range, still under exchange rate stability.
So I want to ask you to kind of put on both hats now, as a banker and as chairman of EPOC, because we spoke about the financial sector and profits not being what was expected based on the budget and all of that, and you outlined some of the reasons for that. How does this impact the stability of the financial sector going into fiscal year 2020? What's this, 24, 25? No, we're already in it.
Well, Kalila, the financial sector is very stable. It's well capitalized. There is enough liquidity. There doesn't seem to be any, and the Bank of Jamaica reports around this in terms of the financial stability, that the financial sector is quite stable. And what you will see fall out in the margins, you will see maybe, non-performing loans increase marginally because customers just cannot afford to service their debt, and therefore, they have to look to restructure otherwise. But if you look at all the key performance indicators for the financial sector, it remains stable, less profitable outside of maybe one or two players, okay? But there's less profitability, less return on equity at this point in time within the financial sector because of just, if your stock in trade is money and the Bank of Jamaica is tight in liquidity and pull money out of the market, then there's less money for you to trade, right? So the money becomes more expensive because you have to compete for it, and therefore the cost of the money increases, and that means your cost of funds increase. You can't pass on all of that cost of funds increase, where the Bank of Jamaica move interest rates from 0.5% or 50 basis points or 0.5% to 7%. You can't pass it on to your customer because you're going to put your customer under significant stress to be able to manage that kind of increase. So you would have not seen the banks passing on those levels of increases to the borrowers, its customers, because you'd put them in a very difficult position. So therefore, the bank would be accepting tighter margins and compressed spreads in doing business, and therefore profits reduce. Therefore, less taxes are remitted to the government of Jamaica.
How does all of this impact employment, especially in your sector?
Well, you hear that there is retrenchment across, in some financial institutions. NCB is driving for efficiency. They have said that very clearly, and everyone would have to look at their cost structure, right? And in looking at your cost structure, you look at your staff costs, you look at efficiency. You have less revenues, therefore you must tie your costs to your revenues, right? And your revenues have had there be fallout in your revenues, therefore you must manage your cost structure, and therefore that would impact employment in that area. You know what I mean? So the financial sector would be like a dampener in the economy, but we see positives in the economy like tourism, like mining, and agriculture and other areas and manufacturing where we're seeing some positives. But the financial sector is a little, I would say, would be underperforming at this point in time.
Let me take some of the comments and questions from our viewers. Gregory says, inflation not going anywhere anytime soon. Sad to say it going to be around for some time with what transpiring in the Middle East. Soon the price of petroleum is going to skyrocket, hence driving up inflation. Lala says, inflation not coming down anytime soon, sir. Do you not recognize what is happening in the world?
Of
then
course.
Max says food prices need to go down to level the playing field. And we have Ingrid echoing that, saying the food bill is ridiculous. I'm paying way more for less. So inflation being one of the top concerns
Yeah,
of our
yeah.
viewers, and anecdotally, I'd say most Jamaicans right now.
Exactly. Well, I mean, if you do a cumulative, right, of inflation over the last since COVID, right, since 2020, inflation has been in the range of maybe 6 to at high of 11%. So if you say that's over 4 years, therefore, if you say that is somewhere between 30% of your purchasing power has been eroded because of inflation. Year over year, you say inflation is 5.6, but it was 6 before the year before, and it was 7 the year before that, and it was whatever it was the year before that, right? Just using taking numbers out of the hat, but it has been in that range 68% every year. So your purchasing power is being eroded, and people, of course, will be feeling it in their pockets, right? On food, in food prices, in transportation costs, in all different, in the consumer price index, they would be feeling it in all buckets, and that is why it's important to get inflation under control. Of course, we have the geopolitical risk, like what we see happening in the Middle East, and and we see where oil prices and shipping prices are impacted. But what we're seeing right now is basically globally inflation is now coming down, and globally it's expected that inflation will average around 5% for this year. Globally, Jamaica is expected to be, as the Bank of Jamaica says, around 6.9%, and hopefully that will come in further. But everything is on a downward trend. Why would it be on a downward trend? It would be on a downward trend because the economies are slowing, because interest rates and monetary policy are tight. Interest rates are high, and they pull liquidity out of the system, like with those BOJ CDs. They pull liquidity out of the system, and they tighten up the money supply, and therefore the economy and areas of the economy will start to slow, and therefore that becomes disinflationary, and therefore we're hoping that inflation will get under control, not barring all the risks, the geopolitical risks, etc., but it's trending downwards globally and locally.
You know what's funny? 5 years ago, we had this conversation. I feel like it's the same conversation, but about devaluation. And now it's
Right.
over on the inflation side. So like
Exactly.
everywhere turn makajukyo, as the saying
Right.
goes. And
Yeah.
even though the macroeconomic numbers tend to look good over the
Yeah.
past few years,
Yes.
on a micro level, it's why we feel it in our pockets.
It's
When
tough.
might we expect some sort of reprieve? Like, when might the macro numbers trickle down to us so that we can
Well,
actually feel the improvements?
more people are working, right? It's just that their purchasing power has been eroded. That's not by any fault of the policymakers. You know what I mean? They have been doing their best to fight inflation. That's the Bank of Jamaica, and import inflation is a lot of inflation is imported from when we have to buy goods and services from abroad. So we don't create that inflation here in the main. It's imported inflation. We can't do anything about it. Now, what we can do is adjust our wages and salaries, which is what people get in the cost of living adjustments. But then businesses are under pressure, and they are trying to manage between their increased cost of money and their overall expense structure, their staff, their light bill, their this, their that, their other. So they're trying to manage their businesses while in this inflationary environment. That's why it's important to get inflation under control, and therefore you control the imported inflation by keeping the exchange rate stable, right? So what we would love to see is for keep it exchange rate stable, use your net international reserves, begin to bring down interest rates. You may see some confidence emerging in the equities market. You may see some people start to breathe a little bit because the cost of funds come down some more, and they start to say, okay, we're getting some signs that our economy could start to return, and therefore people start to see some more bright spots in the economy, because right now it's just being held tight.
You know, I saw a report recently that Jamaica has one of the highest wages, salary levels in the Caribbean. We were third. So Barbados
Yeah,
was
yeah.
number one, and Antigua and Barbuda, and then Jamaica.
I think, yeah. Trinidad
So
is up there, I think. I think Trinidad, yeah. Mm-hmm.
is it
Yeah.
that things just rough everywhere right now?
Right. No. Things are tight, right? In the US, you think the US is extremely challenged, and they're in an election year and they're putting on a good face, but they are very challenged. Small businesses, the financial services, they are facing challenging times also. They're holding it because, there's a lot of, the USA debt to GDP is over 110%. Jamaica's is at 72%, right? So the US is pumping a lot of money in while they still continue to fight inflation. They're pumping a lot of money into their military spend, etc., and driving their economy. However, and they're at the same time keeping interest rates fairly high, and their debt to GDP is increasing significantly. Jamaica is moving in the right direction with our debt to GDP. People don't feel it because of the inflation, but more people are working, right? And the economy is improving. The overall economy is improving. If we were in a non-inflationary environment, and today, people would feel a lot much better if inflation was back where it was prior to COVID, which was like 2-3%. People would feel a lot better. But we are in a global inflationary environment. Jamaica alone can't keep inflation. If inflation is over 3% in the US and globally it's over 5%, Jamaica is just one country within a global context, right? But as I'm making everything. I mean, if our economy was doing this well with high interest rates and tight monetary policy, can you imagine if we didn't have this inflationary environment?
Well, I hope that improves very soon. But what are
Right.
your projections? I don't know if I should
Right.
ask you for a projection or just a feeling. I haven't seen the most recent confidence surveys, but how confident are you in the Jamaican economy in the next year, 2 years, or short
So,
term,
yeah, well,
medium term?
Kalila, given the global construct and where we are, and the Fed, the U.S. Federal Reserve holding interest rates at 5%, the whole world, all the central banks across the world are waiting on the U.S. Federal Reserve to reduce interest rates. You know what I mean? And if they don't reduce interest rates, then it's a major contributing factor to the decision-making process of the Bank of Jamaica and many central banks across the country, because they would like to ease monetary policy, but they know if they move, then it could that could introduce another risk which they don't want necessarily to take. You know what I mean? So therefore, the world is waiting on the U.S. Federal Reserve to move so we can start to ease monetary policy. At some point, if the U.S. Fed does not move, will Jamaica move before and be proactive, because we're seeing the impact on our overall economy. The Jamaican economy.
Do you think we should, or should we just continue waiting, or you think we should be proactive?
I think, having built up the level of reserves that we have, right? So when we can look at our overall monetary policy mix, right? And that is, interest rates, that is open market operations, and through the Bank of Jamaica in pulling liquidity out of the market. So the Bank of Jamaica pulls liquidity out of the market through issuing those Bank of Jamaica CDs that we know about that are paying 10% monthly, right? They use that to pull liquidity out of the system. Now, what the Bank of Jamaica can do is start to ease monetary policy so that the economy can start to breathe, right? And right now we're seeing some contraction in some business areas. We're seeing it in construction, and we're seeing it in some areas, and we're seeing it in the financial sector. What we want now is them to look at the monetary policy mix to see if they can use their reserves, the net international reserves, maintain exchange rate stability, and there possibly some monetary policy ease and reduction in interest rates.
So don't wait on the US. Start easing now.
No, man, we're economically independent, Kalila. Let us be proactive in the same way BOJ moved first before the Fed when interest rates were on their way up. Why can't we go before everybody else? Other countries have moved. Costa Rica has moved. Chile has moved. Other countries have moved. The Dominican Republic has moved and reduced interest rates. We are, so we're looking forward with bated breath to the Bank of Jamaica Monetary Policy Committee meeting in May, this month, May 20th, to hear what they have to say. So let's look out for that.
Next week, we'll definitely be looking out for it. Thank you so much, Keith. Appreciate it as usual.
Thank you, Kalila. Good to see you. All right.
Of course.
Take care. Yeah.
And before we go to the break, let me take a few of your comments. Full disclosure, did he say 10% monthly? Yes. There are quite a few offers right now at 10% and above. Yep. Let me see what else we have here. Kimberly wanted to know if he saw any signs of a recession on the horizon. I think he kind of indirectly answered that question. But let's go now into what do we have next? I think it is our poll question. Yes, it's time now for our poll question. As you guys know, we have a couple of offers right now. We have NCB's APO, and the most recent is an IPO by Omni, which is a thermoplastics company. If you haven't watched that interview yet, it is here on my YouTube channel and on my Facebook page. We did a live interview just last night about the Omni IPO, asking the who is it? Not the chairman, the managing director of the company, as well as representatives from NCB Capital Markets about it. And we also went through the prospectus, so make sure you check that video out. So my question now is, are you planning to invest in the Omni IPO? Here are your options. A, already put in my pre-order, because it opens on Friday. B, no, not for me. C, I'm still deciding. D, I might invest after it's listed. E, other, you can just leave a comment. So you can take that poll on the community tab of my YouTube channel or on Twitter, the app formerly known as Twitter, now known as X, or you can just leave a comment in the chat. That's our poll question for today. Now, let me ask you a question. Have you guys signed up for the Money Mission community yet? If not, here is a clip. So this is how you use LinkedIn to actively find clients. It's not just a placeholder where people find you, but this is a resource and a tool that you can use to start finding your potential clients as well. Oh, that was it. So that's a clip from the last Money Mentorship. Money Mentorship is the first Monday of every month inside the Money Mission community. Money Mission turns 1 this month. It was launched in May of 2023. So we're just about 1 year old this month. All right, guys, remember to hit that like button. Up next, you have your market recap, and the analysts are standing by.
The JSE Combined Index lost over 2,000 points last week. 124 stocks traded across the main and junior markets for the week, ending Friday, May 10, 2024. 41 made gains, 64 lost value, and 19 stayed the same. 194 million shares changed hands on the Jamaican dollar market, valued at $717 million. Phosphorus was last week's most traded stock. It took up 60% of market volume with 117 million shares trading. The stock lost 1 cent to open the new week at $2.15. Wigton traded the second highest. The stock lost 3 cents to open Monday at $1.07. And Caribbean Insurance Brokers rounded out last week's most traded with 9 million shares changing hands. The stock gained $1.45 to open Monday at $3.65. Now let's see who had the biggest gains for the week. Caribbean Insurance Brokers was also the market's biggest gain, up almost 66%. Berger Paints was the week's second biggest gain, up nearly 52%, and Blue Power was up 17% to close the week at $3.71. On the losing side now, the lab was the week's biggest loser. The stock lost 17% to open Monday at $1.27. First Rock Real Estate Investments had the second biggest dip. The stock lost 16% to open the new week at $8.40. And Margaritaville Turks USD lost 15% to close the week at 9 cents US. Over on the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, the composite index was mostly flat last week. Massey was the most traded stock. It lost 5 cents to open Monday at $4.21 TT. Prestige Holdings was the biggest gain of the week. The stock was up nearly 14% to start the week at $12.91 TT. And on the losing side, National Flour Mills fell almost 5% to open Monday at $2 TT. Over in the US, the Dow Jones and S&P 500 are up almost 2% last week, while the Nasdaq gained 1%. At the pumps, the cost of 87 gas was down $4.50 last week, while 90 fell by $3.06. Diesel prices fell $4.50. In foreign exchange, it took an average $157.23 Jamaican to purchase $1 last Friday. That's 39 cents less than the week before. Meanwhile, it took an average $155.22 Jamaican to purchase $1 Canadian. One British pound cost on average $196.61 Jamaican. And finally, you could buy €1 for $172.14 Jamaican on average. Finally, on the crypto markets, Bitcoin prices were up 2% over the past 5 days, trading at $62,565 US on Monday. Ethereum prices were mostly stable, trading at $2,956 US on Monday.
What do the world's richest people all have in common? I'll give you the top 5 from the Forbes Rich List, and let's see if you can figure it out. Number 1 is Bernard Arnault, founder of LVMH, Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy. Number 2, Elon Musk, co-founder of Tesla and SpaceX. 3 is Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon. 4, Larry Ellison, co-founder of tech giant Oracle. And number 5 is Warren Buffett, founder of Berkshire Hathaway. So it should be pretty obvious, right? They all founded or co-founded major companies. They're all entrepreneurs. Jeff Bezos famously founded Amazon out of his garage in 1994. Elon Musk has co-founded 6 companies, including Tesla. Warren Buffett is perhaps the world's most famous investor, but he also founded the investment firm Berkshire Hathaway. So without a doubt, entrepreneurship is one of the major keys to wealth creation. For the world's richest man, Bernard Arnault, this also means generational wealth. All 5 of his children work at LVMH. Now, if this is what you envision for yourself, your first step is simply to get started. Bring that business idea to reality with Business Startup Basics. In this Money Mission webinar, corporate attorney and business accelerator Chantal Simpson tells you everything you need to know to set up your business legally. Now, you already missed the live, but the replay is now available. The link is in the description. Let's get this money. I just realized I forgot to shout out our viewers earlier on. Normally we take at the beginning of the show, we'll say, where are you joining us from? So let me shout out some of our viewers. We have Robert here joining from New Jersey. National Treasure. Oh, thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. Earl over in Helsha. We got Kish joining us from Cool London. Raquel, who is always ready. Raquel is one of our regular viewers. Colette there in Kingston. Dwight in Spanish Town. Nano Sense from far away. Dr. Lithium from outside. We got Humble Boss in Negril. We got Jermaine all the way in China. Shavane in Portmore. Notley from St. Thomas. We have Records joining from Goshen, St. Elizabeth. Big up yourself all the way there in St. Elizabeth. And wherever you are in the world or in Jamaica, shout out to you. Big up you for watching the #1 business show in the Caribbean. It's time now for the analyst, and tonight I have a new analyst for you, brand new, first time joining the show. So let me introduce our panel. I'm joined by David Rose, business writer at the Jamaica Observer, as well as Russell Dill. Is it Russell Dill or Russell D. Hill? Financial blogger with us as well. Hi, Russell. Hi, David.
Hello, good night.
Kal-
And good
Night,
night to you.
Kalila.
It's D. Hill or Dill?
Dill. Dill,
Okay,
Pill, Phil.
one word. Awesome. So, Russell, you're the newbie on the show tonight. And just tell people about your background, who you are, and what you represent.
Well, first, good night and thanks for having me here. I am a former banker. I used to work at a local bank here in Trinidad and Tobago. I have a master's in financial management from the Luxor Global Institute of Business.
So, what's your connection to Guyana? Because I know we're talking about Guyana tonight.
I would have been contacted by the producers to give my insights into the Guyana issue after an article that I would have posted on my LinkedIn page.
What was the article about? Bring the viewers up to speed.
Okay, so this is something that started a little while ago, back in November of 2023, where ExxonMobil, this is a multinational energy company, would have been involved in a transaction with the government, with the Guyana Revenue Authority, that is, which is their version of the IRS, wherein their broker at the time, Rams Logistics, a company out of Trinidad and Tobago, and also operates now in Guyana, they would have inflated invoices, which would have been expensed to the Guyana Revenue Authority. And these invoices would have been to the tune of 4.4 million US dollars. However, there was a clerical error, or so is the claim. There was a clerical error that resulted in the ExxonMobil declaring that the actual cost is 12.1, get this, US billion dollars. This was back in November 16th of 2023. So sometime this year, the clerical error was discovered, and the Guyana Revenue Authority is now taking both parties to court. So last week we would have seen where Ms. Jordan of Rams Logistics and Mr. Gentry of ExxonMobil appearing before a senior magistrate. They were granted their own bail, and the matter is to resume, I believe, in June of this year, the next hearing.
So this is a criminal matter, not a civil one?
It would fall under the Customs Act. So it is based on false declarations that were made. So it won't be treated as a criminal matter, but it would carry severe penalties if found guilty.
Yeah, because you're talking about bail and all these things. I'm like, whoa, okay, serious. So basically the Guyanese government is suing ExxonMobil.
ExxonMobil, yes, for the false declaration. But
what is the ultimate objective? Is it to recoup the monies that should have been paid over?
Well, no money was paid as yet because the error was discovered. And the initial report is that the 12.1 figure should have been in Guyanese dollars. However, Rams Logistics is later saying this discrepancy is a clerical error and it should have just been US. But when you do the calculations and the conversion rates, 4.4 million US does not even amount to, at the conversion rate, it comes up to $920 million. So it's not even 1 billion, far less 12 billion. So there's that discrepancy there, where now coming out of this fiasco, you have the president of Guyana, the vice president of Guyana, Mr. Jack Dale, now reviewing past invoices on behalf of that would have been submitted on behalf of Exxon by Rams Logistics to determine if there were any other overstatements.
So the suspicion is that even though they're saying this was a clerical error, it was actually done purposely.
Yes, that is behind all the diplomacy and stuff. That is the allegation, because this would not have been the first time that the broker for ExxonMobil would have made false declarations. Back in 2022, they faced 10 charges for false declarations that were made back in 2021 and 2022. But in April of last year, they were cleared of all those charges. Then there was another incident back in 2022 where they would have, this is now the agents former agents, because they are no longer operating as the brokers for ExxonMobil, but this is Rams Logistics here, where they were acting as the agents for a motor vessel, and that vessel failed to report to the Guyana Customs when they were departing Guyana for Trinidad. And this is also a violation of the Guyana Customs Act, right? And in that incident, in lieu of court proceedings being instituted against Rams Logistics, they were fined $20 million. So I'm guessing coming out of that incident, you can see why Dr. Jack Dale is now reviewing past invoices to see if anything would have been amiss with regards to those.
Absolutely. Review them with a fine-tooth comb, yes. So what is the potential implication if the court finds them guilty?
Most likely, seeing that is corporations that we're dealing with, there will be heavy fines and penalties attached, and probably review of future current and future contracts. And we can probably see where Rams Logistics would not be, if there are any further projects, they may not be considered for those projects.
How does Guyana's justice system work in terms of expediency? Because here in Jamaica, things move so slow through the justice system. Like, how quickly is it likely to have this resolved?
I think that's something that's endemic in the Caribbean, because here in Trinidad is the same. But so far, I am seeing where these situations, these issues are being given priority. So we saw where back in 2022, they faced certain charges, and in 2023, they were resolved. Hopefully, one can only hope that some form of arbitration takes place between now and in the near future. The next court appearance is in June month end, that is. Hopefully there's some sort of arbitration and some kind of resolution is arrived at, and we see where we don't have a lengthy court process, a lengthy and costly court process at that too.
And finally, Russell, do you see this impacting the business environment or the investing climate in Guyana?
This one incident, I don't think so. But the implications, had this gone through, would have been significant, because under the production sharing agreement between Exxon and the government of Guyana, Exxon is permitted to deduct up to 75% of the revenues towards cost recovery. So basically what that means is that Exxon is doing all the heavy work, but they can claim back on the revenues up to 75%. So think 75% of 12 billion plus whatever additional costs they would have had. Now, thankfully, that the error was recognized, was noticed, and it was picked up on early. So you would not have that that heavy, I don't want to say fine, but that heavy fee, right? If it was not spotted early.
Well,
Spotted
thanks
and
so much
rectified.
for that. Thanks so much for that update and overview, Russell. We'll definitely keep
I'm
tracking
sorry?
this one and see what happens. You hearing me? Okay, I think Russell froze, but that was the last question for
Yes,
him.
I'm
Anyway,
hearing you.
okay, let's bring in David. Welcome back, David.
You're frozen on my side, but I'm hearing you.
Okay,
Uh,
one of our internet is lagging apparently. Welcome back, David.
Thanks, Kalila. Glad to be back.
All right, so today we are looking at this whole thing about this travel advisory, the US travel advisory that's been issued against Jamaica. We have one prominent hotelier saying that this is actually impacting tourist arrivals to Jamaica. You wrote an article about it recently. David, give us the update or give us the overview of the situation.
So let's put it in perspective. So Jamaica has been classified under level 3 by the United States State Department since 2022, I believe. And that level 3 advisory says do not or reconsider travel, basically, right? Level 4 is do not travel. So that would be a Haiti. So, since the advisory, it's been pretty significant in terms of the impact that has occurred to the Jamaican market. What do I mean by that? So back in February, Adam Stewart, who's also the executive chairman of the Observer and head of executive chairman of Sandals, he would have commented in that publication that the sales would have fallen. Sales cancellations would have spiked up to about 45%. During that period. So January 23 is when the new updated, I should say, advisor came out, and you had that kind of fear or increased concern around that time. And between then and end of February, the cancellations really picked up. So Playa, mentioned that basically what they had to do to, not lose those sales entirely was that they said, hey, if you don't want to go to Jamaica, we can send you to Punta Cana, or which basically the Yucatan Peninsula or the Pacific Coast, which is in Mexico, against the Dominican Republic. So Playa, had operations in Mexico, Jamaica, Dominic. They said, hey, if you don't cancel, send it to our resorts in other markets, make you feel comfortable. And there's a problem. Why is it a problem? Because those are tourists who are not coming to spend their money at a domestic resort for that money to multiply down through the system for the rest of the country. So Playa, which is a company that has this Jamaican exposure, has their earnings calls, speaks up, unlike most of the other listed companies in Jamaica, about any impact to tourism that might be observed, is saying that, hey, the government really needs to address this issue in terms of getting the US to reconsider its advisory or even lower the level because it is having an impact. So think about it for a second. If Playa, which is what you'd call a Sandals or a Rio or another hotel brand that has a lot deeper presence in Jamaica, is saying, hey, this is a problem, that should tell you enough. Then Playa has also pointed out that going into the summer season right now, bookings are not so hot either. So yeah, the cancellations in the middle of the winter season, and now we're heading into the summer season, and they're saying that, hey, the traffic or the bookings going into this period is pretty slowed down compared to their historical numbers. So we should remember that we get most of our tourist figures during the winter tourist period, which is like around November to like around March. And when you have that slowdown in that period, it causes a further impact in terms of the future bookings as well, potentially. But you get most of your earnings in the first period, like first quarter, and then the rest of the period is just keeping the business afloat. So travel advisory is pretty significant from the perspective that, hey, hoteliers are saying we're seeing more cancellations, less traffic coming to us. And in the April air traffic report, so for those who don't know, a Mexican company called Airport Pacific Airport Group, Mexican based. They manage your Sangster and normal international airports. They reported that for April, there's a decline in passengers from about 454,500 to 435,000 on a year-over-year basis. And there's a decline of 146,600 to 135,400 for NMIA for April. For 3 months, numbers are just going up, 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 up. New records every month. And April comes and it's just... And remember, coming out of COVID, we'd have had a steady, continuous increase in tourism arrivals to our main ports, in this case, to international airports. So this advisory really is concerning for a lot of hotels because there are other factors to consider. So the tourism sector doesn't get the best rap in terms of the hotel employees' salaries and so forth. But the thing is, we have to remember that last year there was a 44% increase in minimum wage last year. Minimum wage is going up again this year, but you also include security costs going up. General insurance has gone up pretty high as well. So as a result, the hotel operators are saying that we're going to compress on more than one side. Slower sales, higher expenses, which what does that mean, Kalila? That means that you're likely going to see the hotels use less workers. When these hotels use less workers, you're going to have these persons spending less in their local communities and so forth. And you get what I'm going, Kalila? So like this ripple effect just goes on and on and on basically. And William Afford, who is the chairman of Wasinka Group, a large Jamaican manufacturing distributor, has good, exposure to the tourism sector, said that this is a problem when a ripple effect like this happens in tourism. Because remember, tourists comes, and remember, we import most of our food to support the tourism, we import a significant amount of food and other goods to support the tourism sector, and along with, domestic goods. When these tourists come, they go to the hotel tourism food. They get in the local bananas, some local meat as well. Then, these persons might go to a resort, probably go to a Chucker, Dolphin Cove, probably might just grab a local taxi, a local Uber, just go around, look around, go to a Rick's Cafe. So it is trickle-down effects of money just going through the economy. When you have these
let me
tourists,
ask you this, David. Let me ask you this. What can the Jamaican government do about this? Because they don't have any control over what the US State Department recommends. And the call is for the Jamaican government to intervene. Intervene how?
Well, I can't give you that exact answer, but based on what I can interpret from the whole perspective is, I think the Playa boss and, even other tourism heads are saying the government needs to demonstrate to the US State Department that, hey, your advisory has caused a significant, overreaction, because the parts where they've highlighted in their related advisory are not near the tourist or tourist spots. So imagine that I tell you, for example, that there is a fire in Half a Tree, but I live in Mona. No. What does a fire happening in Half a Tree have to do with me living in Mona? You get the first thing, Kalila? So they're kind of saying that when you tell the public, or in this case, the advisory, persons thought that the fire that was in Half a Tree was in Mona. So there's this massive overreaction. So they're trying to say, hey, let us discuss, and let's discuss about a potential revision of that advisory. So in the level 3 doesn't change. They're saying, hey, it's better to give a more accurate reflection of what's really happening on the ground, because Bruce Wardinsky, Adam Stewart, they've, and even the tourists in the different areas say, hey, in the tourist spaces, the tourists really don't get attacked or have any issues. So you might hear about it, harassment in terms of persons trying to higgle and sell things to the tourists, but for the most part, tourists don't necessarily, you don't hear these stories about tourists being kidnapped or any massive injuries or attacks. So they're trying to say, hey, look, the tourists are in this isolated area of the country. Most of them in hotels. They do go to the hotels. They go on planned excursions. They're usually safe. So, and remember, 70% of our traffic inflow into the country in terms of tourist arrivals comes from the USA. So they're trying to say, hey, even if you don't change the level 3 to level 2, just reflect it to show what's really happening from a better perspective. Kalila.
So I wanted to share, I want to share something because I saw this video on TikTok yesterday, and it was a response. And I'm just bringing this up because maybe it is an example of how the Jamaican authorities can handle it and what they can actually do to be proactive to respond to this sort of situation. So I saw this on TikTok, and it was Guatemala's Guatemala's tourism minister. Let me share my screen.
Sure.
Because there was a video going around on TikTok that Guatemala was like the kidnapping capital of the world. And that resulted in same thing happening in Jamaica, a lot of canceled bookings. People were scared. And this is how Guatemala's tourism minister responded.
Hi, Jacob. I saw your list of the top 10 countries with most kidnappings around the world. Now, I know lists are fun, but you got to get your facts straight. My name is Harris Whitbeck, and I'm Guatemala's current Minister of Tourism. Now, I know a little bit about facts because I was a journalist for about 25 years, covering all sorts of stories of war and crime, natural disasters, and political upheavals around the world for a major US television network. And you know what the biggest lesson I learned as a journalist is? Well, you've got to check your facts. Statistics from our Attorney General's office and the National Police Force in Guatemala indicate that in 2023, there was only one case of kidnapping involving a foreign tourist, and that was resolved peacefully. And so far this year, no cases of any kind have been reported. And according to the United Nations Development Program, a leading UN agency, there has been a 12.7% decrease in homicides this year. Those, my friend Jacob, are facts. So I would leave you with two things. Number one, check your facts. That's just good practice for anybody involved in media. And secondly, come see us. I would like to invite you to Guatemala. Come see for yourself that we are a country of warm, welcoming, kind people who have so much to offer to our visitors. We're a country of volcanoes, lakes, mountains, beautiful traditions, beautiful food, and we are ready to welcome you and everybody with open arms.
So that's the video from Guatemala's foreign minister reacting to basically a similar situation that Jamaica finds itself in right now. That wasn't the original video. I was trying to find the original video to see how many views and likes and comments it had. But what do you think of that type of approach? Yeah.
No, it's good. And just for context, it's kind of turned into political football now from that story. There's a release published yesterday, but basically, I think there needs to be a real honest discussion and approach to, the whole crime situation and its potential perception by authorities that do not pass through the general environment. Because, as the Minister of Tourism in that case from Guatemala pointed out, the reality that would have probably happened in the past or anything like that is not the reality on the ground in the current day. So some level of public I should say PR or just engagement alongside some level of updates as to what's really going on, because the reality is, as much as we love to promote sun, sand, and sea, we have to remember that there are other markets that probably might be cheaper, probably have more variety and so forth than Jamaica. So in this case, where an advisor can have such an impact on tourism arrivals and just interest in our market, it is important that we get some level of concise message out there to say, hey, this is what's really going on. Because while you might hear these stories, you might have you might have traveler influencers who come to Jamaica and explore the most dangerous spots or so forth. The reality is Jamaica might have a rough reputation, but at the same time, it might not be as graphic as people perceive from the other side. And that's just one of the realities that come with living in what you'd call a harsh reality on paper, but not the same on the ground.
Right. So David, before you go, I have to ask you about Omni. It's the first IPO of the year. The viewers want to know what your thoughts are about the Omni IPO.
Well, funny thing, that's the one perspective I haven't finished reading. Busy, yes, but at the same time, I see a lot of interest as prior offers. It's first IPO. Good to see them attempting, to try and reduce some level, well, increase their equipment, also benefit from the tax break. I, think that they should probably revalue the land, give a little more context on path forward. Pretty competitive space, but I think this offer is likely to, just be closed, open and shut as usual, probably within
So you
1
said
to
it's
2
a
days.
very competitive space, the thermoplastic space. That's very competitive in Jamaica.
So remember, PVC, for example, right? Faucet is in that space. That's one example, right? So it's a company that is already out there. Just one simple example. You have Tankwell, you have other hardware players that are involved in that space, probably manufacture, import, but there are other large players out there that have a level of presence alongside muscle power to play. So although Faucet, for example, their sales decline in their Q1, they're still probably 2-3 times larger than Omni. And while they benefit from having electrical sales, they are still taking a larger presence in the PVC space and looking into Guyana or the Caribbean markets. So I'm just giving that one example for context. In terms of making the pipe, in terms of making the hoses and other materials, I don't think you have other players in that space. But at the same time, I'm just showing you that there are competitors that exist in some of the products that they do manufacture, not necessarily from imports, but from their own domestic production, and they already have a pretty sizable presence. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they're going to grow themselves into a player through the tax break, the increased capital and so forth. But to be honest, I think it's gonna close, open and shut. It's not like it's an offer that has 200 million shares available for the public. It's just 120 million. Even with
Right.
liquidity, Kalila, I don't think that I was going to take long to close. Like I said, probably by next week, Tuesday, or even earlier, you're going to hear it's closed. And the market might be tight, but people who want to hear IPO, doesn't matter. You're just getting it.
Right. I agree. It's a pretty small offer, even though they said 500 million, only about 120 million are for the public. So I think those are going to go fairly quickly, especially given that it's the first IPO of the year.
And the thing is,
So, yeah.
even with other market offers offers out there in the market, some persons have a preference significantly for equity. So you have the MJE bond offer out right now. NCBFG just had their bond offer close last week, Monday. You have some companies offering preference shares, but for some
You have
persons,
Mayberry's bond is out, NCB APO is out, all kind of thing right now.
no, and that's just my point. So, but the thing is, those offers are considerably larger. You see, this $120 million for the public specifically alone. So I don't see that massive hurdle to get that kind of money. So in any difficulty. So to be honest, I'm looking forward to just see probably by the Q3 results, which will be published around November, to see like how they're really transforming as a business in terms of growing their overseas sales as the domestic economy slows. So for the viewers on Taking Stock, here is something you should go and check out. Go and check out Grupo Campari's first quarter results. Grupo Campari is the company that owns Jerry and Nephew. They reported that the Jamaican rum sales were down by 8.3% in the first quarter, and that's from an organic sales perspective. They mentioned that was due to a reduction in, that was really a capacity issue. Then, with respect,
I was surprised. I'm like, what? People are less depressed, so less rum selling? What's going on?
Let me continue, Kalila, and this is why we have Taken Stock. So we have a company in Trinidad called Whitco, West Indian Tobacco Company. What is Whitco? They are the company that supplies Carreras and the rest of the other BAT companies in the region with their cigarettes. in their Q1 report, their revenue was down 40%. Overall revenue, right?
40.
Yes. And then their export revenue, which is the other Caribbean markets, it was down 46%. Export sales made up 18% of Whitco's revenue in 2023, and carriers makes up about a third of those sales. In their Q1 report, they put declining performance was anticipated over the previous financial quarter. However, the shortfall was exacerbated by a decrease in volumes in January in our export markets, in particular Colombia, Guyana, and Jamaica, as they manage their inventories. Now, Carreras released their Q1 report just this afternoon, and for context, Kalila, Carreras sells cigarettes like hotcakes. The revenue was down 27%, from 3.7 billion to 2.71 billion year over year, just to give some context.
So I feel like there are two ways we can interpret that. One is what I alluded to earlier, saying that people are less depressed, so they don't need to rely on alcohol and cigarettes as much. And then the other is that people just don't have the money to spend on alcohol and cigarettes because they're not essential items.
But you're getting onto the right point, Kalila, because when you look at different companies across the JSC, you're seeing a slowdown in Q1 sales, and you're going to see more reduction in sales because business is just down. And although SPL reported an increase in Q1 revenue, that was really driven by the PINCO's business. So I'm just highlighting all of these points to kind of just put a point across, which is times are tough, and this is just where, in context, where these different economic barometers of companies, publicly listed companies, can give you insights into what's happening on the ground for everybody to read. So we saw Dr. Clark mention the missed targets or missed budget targets for the March tax revenues or inflows for the government. So I'm just showing you how, when you see that impact from the GOJ figures, you can tie it back into different consumable items or spending to get that kind of relationship or connection or connecting the dots in a sense.
Very, very interesting stats, David. Thanks so much for joining us once again.
You're welcome, Kalila. Take it easy, everybody.
So we're going to take our final break and come back with your comments. You have quite a few of them that I want to get to. I'm Kalila Reynolds, the Money General, and I'm on a mission to help you get better with money. Join me inside the Money Mission community, where I'll teach you how to manage money, make more money, and annihilate bad debt. Click the link in the description to sign up for your basic or premium membership. Let's get this money. Welcome back. Final comments. Who am I? Says, never forget these two principles of money and the stock market. Cash is king. Cash is what you have and other people need. Stock is what you have and people might not need. Okay, thanks. Who am I? Javon says, had a working birthday today. Happy birthday, Javon. Hope you enjoyed your day to the max, even though you did have to work. Just getting a chance to join. Hope you money makers are capitalizing on the opportunities opening up in the market right now. Give yourself a nice birthday present with an investment, Javon. Malik says he's finally getting a chance to watch live. So welcome, Malik. Glad to have you live. Who am I? Says Guyana's population is 578,000. I think it's more than that. No, their population is like 750, 800,000. Enough oil money to make every Guyanese a billionaire. And then he says, Guyana, the Dubai of the Caribbean. Sean, is David still on? Sean says, what a comment gone. Sean says, David looked like he's been hitting the gym. David, have you been hitting the gym? And then Orville is trolling you. Orville says the shirt just tight. Who am I? Again, has a lot of comments on the tourism situation. He says this is not a tourism issue. This is a Jamaica murder rate issue, adding that Jamaica can't be the white sand and beach of rum and Irie vibes and still be the murder capital of the world. People go to safe perception countries, or countries that are perceived to be safe. But then Lanesra says that Jamaica is one of the safest set of people in Jamaica are tourists. We have a few comments on that Guatemala tourism minister who am I said, dude does not even look Guatemalan. I disagree. See, I'm from Belize and we share a border with Guatemala. I think he does look Guatemalan. Guatemala has different ethnicities, different looks of people. I can see him fitting in there. He doesn't sound Guatemalan. I give him that. I give you that. He does have an American accent. But looks-wise, I could see him being from Guatemala. Lanesra said, David sounds more Guatemalan than that minister's. Obviously, he probably went to school in the States and, he knows the audience that he's speaking to. So put on that American accent to reach that American audience. Hey, it's called code switching. Kimberly says, America is way more dangerous than Jamaica with the amount of mass shooting and senseless killing. And then finally, looking at the Omni IPO, Ryan says, Omni Industry has great business in the fire safety suppress system that will benefit tremendously from high-rise buildings and subdivision in the real estate market. So thank you for those comments. Thank you, Ryan, and thank you to everyone else. So Dintil is telling us as well that Guyana's population is 741,000 as of 2024. I figured it was around that region. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in to yet another episode of Taking Stock Live. I appreciate your presence as usual every week. We are here, we are live, and if you miss a part of the show, you can always watch the replay. Thanks again to Chairman of EPOC, Keith Duncan, and our analyst, David Rose from The Observer, as well as Trinidad's Russell Dill, a financial blogger. Thanks to you for joining us. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, share the video with a friend, let people know what we are doing over on this side of the internet. Also turn on those post notifications so that you can be the first when all our features drop. We have a few things coming up this week. We have a Sagicor event tomorrow. They're having their quarterly press briefing tomorrow morning. And we're probably going to be publishing that. Tomorrow's Wednesday, probably by Thursday. We're going to be publishing something coming out of that event. So yeah, quite a few things happening. If you haven't watched the Omni IPO review yet, you can check that out. If you haven't watched the NCB APO review yet, you can also check that one out. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Kalila Ray. That's my handle. That's my only page. Anybody else is a scammer. If they're trying to get you to invest with them, I do not do investments on behalf of other people. Just report and block those pages. That is not me. I don't have Telegram. I don't use WhatsApp to solicit or anything like that. That is not me. So just report those people whenever you see them. If you want to connect with the analyst this week, check the description box below for their contact information. And you can also visit the website, KalilaReynolds.com, for financial information you can use however you like it. Watch, listen, or read. Also go to moneymissionja.com to join the Money Mission community and tell a friend about taking stock, because investing sorry. Ooh, something just catch up in my throat. Investing is the new sexy. So let's make it cool to talk about money. I'm Kalila Reynolds. See you next week.
Let's get this money.